Today down in the comments, I want to hear what is the worst movie you've ever liked, you've ever enjoyed. I don't necessarily mean so bad it's good, because I feel like a lot of movies that are technically or structurally or in any other way bad or inept, if they're entertaining, I enjoy them. Is that weird? I don't fall into the so bad it's good camp. I fall into a movie can be not good, but good camp. What's a movie like that for you? Hello, I'm Adam Caesar, the author of many books you can go read right now in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, and one Clown in the Cornfield coming soon from Harper Teen that you can pre-order. And this is Project Black T-Shirt, the channel where we take a new or a reissue horror movie or a bunch of horror movies and pair them with a reading suggestion that you will like if you like those movies. And today we're talking about the Al Adamson masterpiece collection from Severin Films. You might have seen this box, it's a beautiful box, around YouTube, around different Twitter, around different kind of cult movie bloggers and reviewers and horror movie experts. And that's because this was a big event. This is kind of one of the bigger releases this year. And it came out like a couple weeks ago where it started shipping. And I didn't make a video of it because it's 32 feature-length films. I want to review it and I want to talk about it. I want to do more than kind of just flip through the pretty pages, which it does have pretty pages. So what I did is I took my time. I wanted to enjoy myself. I went chronologically through about the first half of these films. I'd seen some of these films before, so I have the poster here for Nerf Sherry, the release where it was called Killer's Curse. One of my favorite Al Adamson movies, if not still my favorite. But this is a beautiful, beautiful set. It's in these cardboard sleeves. They lay things out not only roughly chronologically, but also kind of by genre a little bit. And you get some of the features, like so for example, The Fakers was recut and re-edited, and they added motorcycle sequences and Colonel Sanders, and they made it Hell's Bloody Devils. And that's something that Adamson and his producing partner Sam Sherman did an awful lot of. These are not unheralded gems. These are not auteur pictures. These are not art house horror. These are not exploitation with a brain. These are purely products of a business arrangement between Adamson, a guy who grew up with a father who was a Hollywood cowboy, and a mother who was an actress and wanted to make films, linking up with Sam Sherman, a film fan who wanted to be in the film business. And these are products first and foremost, but they're fascinating. And as I started to say, I didn't finish everything in this set, so I think I still may do a kind of follow-up video. That's the second half of this set, but it was getting to the point where these are almost all sold out everywhere. So I wanted to talk about the set. If you were on the fence, I had people emailing me, adding me on Twitter saying, like, I see you have the Adamson set, should I get it or not get it? And that is a very complicated question to answer, because it really depends. It depends on the kinds of movies you enjoy. It depends on your patience level for things that are, let's just face it, not great, schlocky. The enjoyment that I get from these films, and I do get an abundance of enjoyment. If I were recommending this to myself, if I were recommending this to someone who is exactly like me in every way, shape, or form, I would say In a Heartbeat is one of the best, most impressive, most exhaustive, weirdest undertakings I've ever seen a cult film label or reissue house tackle. It's really incredible and commendable, and you can see in this book that it comes with. It's this little companion book by Bill Ackerman and Amanda Reyes. It charts. The most interesting stuff is the book is charting where these prints were found and how they were assembled, and how Severin kind of got their hands on some of these movies, and some of these movies are considered lost movies. It's really, really commendable and really awesome, and just on a preservation front and just on a presentation front, incredible piece of memorabilia. But it's expensive, and 90% of 99% of people, even considering my friends who are horror fans, I would not be like, yeah, you gotta buy this expensive set and check it out because it's gonna blow your mind. There's stuff in here that will blow anyone's mind because it's absolutely wild and crazy. And the best part of this set is that it's kind of built around director David Gregory, who is the head of Severin Films. He made a documentary about Al Adamson, and it's fantastic. It's a really, it walks the line almost between being a true crime documentary, because Al Adamson was sadly murdered in a very brutal and weird and bizarre and morbid way. And it kind of starts with the murder and then works backward and becomes a kind of functioning filmography. But the movie's not dour. The movie's very fun and light and interesting, while at the same time being respectful. It's called The Real Life, Blood and Flesh, the real life, real with 2 E's, life and ghastly death of Al Adamson. It's really interesting. He's talked extensively with with Bud Cardos and Robert Dix and Sam Sherman, and this kind of bromance, lifelong best friendship that these two had. And you talk about him finding his wife on Satan Sadist. It's this really interesting, lovingly rendered story. Movie's a little under 2 hours, but that's great, and they are selling that on its own, so you don't have to get that, and it also comes with the female bunch as a double feature. So I'll put the links down in the description for that. That's not limited edition or anything, and I can recommend the documentary. I can recommend to everyone. Everyone who likes movies should see this documentary. It's great. The other movies, the other 31 movies in the set, though, boy, I'm just gonna go through them real quick with lightning round impressions, or this video would take forever. First up is the female bunch that comes with Blood and Flesh. It's on the same disc. Very notably, parts of it, inserts, were filmed in the Spawn Movie Ranch when the Manson family was actually living there. It's a fascinating kind of biker movie with no bikes. It's the women gang are on horses, and they're building this kind of violent commune, and the one leader is trying to make sure that none of the other members of the gang sneak in men, because this women-only compound, and things go really violently bad. It is one of Adamson's better films, I think. It is also one of the movies that was almost lost, and the print, it's not the negative. They found several prints, and they kind of cut it up to try to make it take the best parts of each print. It's really rough looking, but good on Severin for kind of rescuing that film. Then we kind of go back and start going chronologically. It starts with Psycho A Go-Go, which already had a title called Echo of Terror, I think. It was never released, so they went back and they shot go-go dancing scenes. And that's going to become a hallmark of Adamson's style. Taking a movie that doesn't work and keep on iterating and keep on adding footage until it works, quote unquote. But it just works as exploitation, because you add a zombie to a bank heist movie, and after you've added a brain switching science fiction subplot to the same regular old heist movie, you're gonna end up with a mishmash. Psycho Go-Go is the best of these three movies. The Fiend with the Electronic Brain is the sci-fi version of that, where they added John Carradine and brain science fiction hijinks to make the Psycho and Psycho A Go-Go a Psycho. Then they added zombies with Blood of Ghastly Horror, and this is the best version of this movie, and then they added all this other stuff to make two weirder but less entertaining films. Then we've got Halfway to Hell, Adamson's kind of directorial debut that he had taken over after his father had walked off the set. So it's kind of a very old-style Western film. Dull as the day is long, but interesting to see where Adamson starts, because he stars as the bad guy in this movie. Then we have Five Bloody Graves, another one where if this had a disc on its own, if Severin ever releases a disc on its own, I would highly recommend getting Five Bloody Graves. It is weird, downbeat Western where we're following one character as he kind of goes in and out of these episodic moments, and everyone around him dies, and the movie's narrated by death itself. It's a real bummer. Really garish colors. I really liked it. Then we've got Blood of Dracula's Castle, which is, I don't know, I'm saying how much I like all these movies, because I really like this one too. Another film with John Carradine. Adamson was constantly using older actors that later he would use Lon Chaney Jr., actors that kind of had fallen on hard times, had health problems. He'd give them one last shot, and then get a name that they could put on their poster. Blood of Dracula's Castle is kind of a comedy. It's kind of a comedy of manners about two old Draculas, Dracula and his bride, kind of having to survive on blood in this Californian, Texas ranch house / castle, and then all the people that kind of unwittingly go there. And it's very odd. Horror of the Blood Monsters. The bulk of Horror of the Blood Monsters is a Filipino black and white monster movie that has really cool, really weird creatures like Batmen and snake people, which they just have little tubes sticking out of their necks, and lobster guys. So he had all this great footage from this Filipino monster movie, but it's in black and white, so they shot color stuff around it and then figured out some plot reason to have tint to make people think they were seeing a color film when they weren't. Boy, it is a real mishmash, and at some points a real slog, but you just gotta marvel at the showmanship to think you could get away with something like this, and they did. They got away with it, and they sold it to theaters and drive-ins. And then we have The Fakers, a kind of James Bond ripoff movie with a very catchy title that they play a bunch in the movie, a title song, not just in the James Bond inspired opening. And then when they couldn't sell that, they cut in, this was post Easy Rider, they cut in biker footage that doesn't really connect to anything else, and is like, you have to use narration to kind of even understand why we're following half James Bond plot, half biker thing. But still fun and charming, and the biker footage has a real texture to it. Then we get to the kind of good stuff. If you've seen one Al Adamson movie or know of one Al Adamson movie, you probably know Dracula versus Frankenstein, which very obviously wasn't made to star Dracula or Frankenstein. You get a great few stories about this in Blood and Flesh, but it's really something. If you've never seen this one, this release is great. They spend a lot of time with the extras here. They poured over some extras that were on the Shriek Show recent Blu-ray, and then do some new stuff. And it's a wild, weird movie. And for fans of like old carnivals and stuff, it's got some great footage of like old dark rides and haunted houses. It's very cool. A lot of great vintage Vegas footage too. So that's the thing. Al Adamson came from when he met up with Sam Sherman. He was managing a nightclub, so there's a lot of like overlap in that. The kind of late '60s, early '70s kind of glitz and sleaze of nightclub ownership kind of permeates these early films and some of the later ones too. But it's a weird career, a weird filmmaker, a weird bunch of movies. And then just two more to talk about, and then we're gonna kind of stop at the halfway mark because I haven't watched the rest of the films, and I'll give my general impressions. Brain of Blood. This was a Hemisphere Picture kind of contract job where they wanted something to play alongside the Blood Island films, and I've talked about the Filipino Eddie Romero Blood Island movies, and Severin even did a set of those. I'll put a link up to my review of those. I love those movies, and this was kind of an unofficial entry in that because Sam Sherman was also involved in distributing those, and they wanted to make a movie that looked like it could have come from the Philippines, even though when you see this movie, you're like, these are all Anglo actors. Some of them are in makeup to make them not look that way. It's borderline insulting, but it is super entertaining and weird. It's a very good companion piece with Dracula versus Frankenstein, because clearly Adamson working on the kind of same wavelength there. And then we come to what I think is maybe the best film in the set. I have my own love for Nurse Sherry, but I will admit that Satan Sadist is probably the better film. This is a biker film where it's more of like it's kind of like a siege movie, a standoff. We follow these bikers a little bit, and they're causing all this kinds of trouble. They're doing really bad stuff. They're absolutely unrepentant garbage people. And then they take over a small diner where we have several other characters who we've kind of followed. They're meeting up at a diner, and they start killing people at the diner. But the head of the gang is Rust Hamlin from before this, from West Side Story, because Adamson was a huge fan of musicals, and after this from Twin Peaks. But Rust Hamlin in this, he implies in the documentary and the special features that he only really took this job because A, he needed the money, and B, he said that he said to Adamson, I want to be able to kind of do what I want to do, and to get that name value, he let him go. And the best stuff in the movie by far is the stuff where we're close on Rust Hamlin, and he's doing this. He's the leader of this biker gang. He's wearing this weird hat, and he's just a real bastard. And his climactic speech, which actually comes at the middle of the movie before he kills these people, he gives this kind of pro flower child, pro hippie speech that goes down in cinema history as one of the best improvised speeches of all time. It's really great. It's got a real nice energy to it that a lot of these films kind of lack. But man, Satan Sadist is really, really good. I hope if Severin really is truly sold out of these sets and you can't get these, I hope with their deal that they have with some of the streamers, I think they stream some stuff with Shudder, I hope that Satan Sadist kind of gets its audience now that they've done this nice new version of it, because it's really, really good. Kind of a proto Devil's Rejects in a way, if that's any kind of indicator of what kind of movie it is. But those are the films in the set that I've watched and feel confident to talk about. I haven't watched their version of Nurse Sherry they have on the disc yet, but I can, through the Vinegar Syndrome's standalone disc, I can highly, highly, highly recommend that one. I really like it. Later in his career, he switches up. Those are most of the horror movies he's made, if not all the horror movies he's made. He does action movies at a certain point. He does sexploitation movies. He does blaxploitation movies. He does children's movies, is how he ends his career in the late 70s and early 80s. And I am excited to watch the rest of the set and see where he takes those other genres, but purely talking about his horror stuff and his Western stuff and his biker stuff, it is amazingly trippy to watch all these movies in a row. Because what I did is I watched all the movies, and then I watched the documentary to kind of be able to speak about that on the channel. Probably watch the doc first. It doesn't really spoil anything for the movies, but it really gives you an appreciation, and you'll start recognizing these faces. As you watch the movies, you'll be like, oh, that's the same guy. That's Bud Cardos again. That's Bud Cardos jumping out of a plane, out of a car, out of a, doing all this different stuff. You do recognize the kind of troupe, the tight-knit, let's put on a show aspect of Al Adamson's filmmaking, but you get so much more of an appreciation if you've watched the doc. If anything I said sounds good, you probably already have this set. If you can't find the set, I'll put links down below. It might sell out. Third-party vendors, I'm sure, are going to jack up the prices. Like I said, there's still hope that some of these movies they're going to release in standalone editions. They've already got Brain of Blood out by itself. Vinegar Syndrome already has Nurse Sherry out. The documentary you can get on its own. So you can definitely dip your toes in these, even if the set is sold out. So glad that I have almost 20 more movies to go sit and have my brain absolutely melted by. And I can't wait to do it. But I did want to just put this video together to tell you guys about the Al Adamson Masterpiece Collection, just in case you were considering picking it up. That's my 2 cents on it. But it also comes with that huge caveat of these are definitely not for everyone. They're not for most people. Threadbare. If you think you know cheap movies or weird movies or iffy production value, you will be challenged by some of the absolute mind-numbing lack of coverage, weirdness on display here, but there is an energy to it, and there is that sense of community and weirdos and outsiders coming together, sometimes under nefarious circumstances with mob money, with death and destruction involved, and alcoholism and sickness, and but God, it's so interesting and so puts you in the mood to like be like, well, I could probably make a movie too, or like something like, it's so inspiring. There's something, not to draw a direct comparison to like Ed Wood and the fictionalized version of Ed Wood that Tim Burton presents, but it's almost like this is a more real version of that story. Man, really interesting stuff. Well worth checking out. I've tweeted a whole bunch about it and thoughts I didn't get to here. So if you want to follow me on Twitter and go back through and check that out, if you want to hear more me talk about this epoch of exploitation in horror cinema, go do that. But I really enjoyed the documentary's a must see. The rest of the movies in the set are a see if you're a masochist. But boy, so glad to have the option to watch these movies. And just talking on a production level, some of Severin sets in the past have been like, you know, cheaper cardboard or less, you know, less than perfect presentation, but this thing can go on a shelf next to the Arrow Herschel Gordon Lewis set and kind of not miss a beat, because it's spectacular production value and just really a well-made piece of art here. This week's book recommendation, and some weeks book recommendations do not have anything in common with the movies, and this is one of those cases. But this is The Ancestor by Danielle Trussoni. And this is, after you've absolutely scraped the bottom of the barrel with Al Adamson, you can read a book that feels classy and nice and highbrow. Because The Ancestor is about a woman who, she's living in America, and her marriage is kind of falling apart. We know that she's had a miscarriage. It's put a strain on her relationship with her husband. She's really tight with her in-laws. Same kind of tight-knit community, Italian-American community they both grew up in. And she gets a mysterious letter one day telling her that she is the benefactor, she's the last living benefactor of this uncle she didn't know she had, this distant relative she didn't know she had. And she's got to go to Italy to go get this inheritance and find out what it is. And it turns out that it's this castle that's nearby this village in the mountains, and you can only really get to it by helicopter, and goes there, and it starts like a kind of traditional or more modern kind of gothic, maybe gothic romance. You don't even know what the trajectory of this book's going to be. There's like another relative who like lives up in a spire in the castle, who's like kind of cordoned off and secretive, and she's too old. Like, how can she be this old? And there's this whole mystery of like unraveling that, and that's kind of the first third of the book. And around the 1/3 mark, you find out what that ancestry is, or at least you start to find out what that ancestry is and why she's so special and why this is such a weird, special place. And the book goes in a direction that rarely do I recommend books just based on the audacity of like the twist, but it goes in a direction that I just was not expecting from the first third of it. And it ends in a really weird way. It almost becomes a completely different genre. Like, it starts as a kind of more traditional horror novel, close first-person protagonist horror novel with like little epistolary pieces learning about these ancestors and their kind of kids that are a little bit weird. Then it shoots off in a completely different direction. I rarely like just give pure props for just pure audacity, but man, beautifully written book. I don't want to say anything more about it because it is spoilable. I would be even careful what other reviews you read about it, because if you have that kind of back half, someone tells you what it's about, it's not going to be as special. If that does like sound like your kind of thing, like I said, beautifully written, very well executed, thrilling in some parts, very sad, very emotional in others, very kind of oddball in some respects, in some sections, almost very oddball in a literary, high capital L kind of way. I really liked it, really interesting, and like I said, it's the kind of eating your vegetables after you've watched all these Al Adamson movies, because damn. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to go click through the links, check out my other books, and check out Clown in a Cornfield, out in August, very soon. Clive Barker called me an author who knows how to make us afraid. There's a bunch of other great blurbs that you can go on my website and read right now. I'm very excited for this, guys, and please help me put this book in a lot of different homes. If you've got younger relatives who are just getting into horror, if you've got you know, kids in your life, teens, this is not okay to give kids, but it's good. It's okay to give teens. Yeah, let this be a gateway drug to horror for them. If you're an adult who loves a good slasher story, this is for you as well. So check it out. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the kind comments. Thank you for all everything. I will see you next week.